Noe here from Fight Center LLC. Got a couple new shares here for those who've been interested in these spring blowback shell ejecting props. First one today is going to be another one of these sort of Glock derivatives. Now, there's a lot, as in real firearms, there's a lot that's derivative of Glocks. There's a lot of people who make firearms with interchangeable parts, whether we're looking at like the, PSA, palmetto state arms, or the lone wolf, 80% receivers you can finish off with custom Glock parts, whatever. There's a lot of ways to kind of pimp your Glock these days. But this one here, Feng Wu, this is one of these shell ejecting ones that is meant to also be able to fire these little plastic, bullet things. I don't know what to call those. Now, as with most of these, the only sparse instructions you get are completely in Chinese. There's some translation here, but escape key. What is an escape key? Well, that's an interesting one because this is a feature that I haven't seen on any of the others. And I do say, while I'm unpacking this, I appreciate the much better packaging you get on this than on a lot of the others. So this one does not have the trademarks of any particular company. It's not like the Salient Arms International, but it does have some, Glock logos that are probably not licensed and are probably unofficial ripoffs because that's how these things go when they come out of China most of the time. But it does say, if you look at the fine print here, blowback training model made in China. So this is not trying to look like it's necessarily a legit firearm, but it does have the 9x19 on the top here, even though the actual rounds are probably not quite that. It has the name of the company, the Feng Wu, on the right side here. So, it's not one that's trying to be a trademarked replica of an actual firearm, but there's plenty of things that look a lot like this. Plenty of things that are similar to it. So it's not that hard to sell. Magazine kind of middle of the line here. Does sort of have the double stack appearance at least, and doesn't have the, Pez dispenser kind of opening switch thing there. But basically single stack, doesn't actually do double stack, so capacity's not as great. But the most interesting thing about this, it's fairly standard in terms of the function here, and the way that it does the shell ejection. Let me try not to lose the rounds here. Let's see if I can do this. There we go. Yep, so, it ejects the rounds like most of the others. What makes this one interesting to me, as with some of the cheaper shell ejection models that are the spring blowback, you can't rack the slide normally. Now, I had a recent video about some cheats on that involved holding down the trigger and some stuff like that. This one actually comes with its own built-in cheat, which I've never seen before, and that's this thing. That's the escape key, whatever, on their translated instructions. So if you hold down this thing here, then you can rack the slide, and you can, eject casings, chamber rounds, whatever, but it only pulls it back. It still gets slide lock if it is out of ammunition. Not having out of ammunition, it'll go forward just fine. So on these, if you want to rack the slide both ways, you actually have to hold down both this weird little escape key thing here and the slide release here. So you've got both fingers holding things down, and then it'll move freely. So it's a little weird, and especially since they're calling such attention to it with this, highlighted sort of copper color that really stands out. This is not a button I have ever seen on any real firearm, ever. So its inclusion here is a little interesting, and it does seem to be purely for a training purpose, to be able to rack the slide. And it does put your finger in not a bad place. That's not too far off from where you'd want your finger, as sort of a default. I prefer that over the holding the trigger down thing that I was doing with the other, which, yes, does also work, but then you have to hold down the trigger. This is much better. Allows you to leave that trigger guard open, but it's just weird. It's interesting, kind of unique. I don't know. I'm not sure what to think of that. In terms of replica type and function, it does not actually chamber the round, so it's not like one of those. The ejector, though, it's not a slide, little spring-loaded thing on the side. The way it is with some, it's it is actually kind of like popping it out as the slide goes back. So it's kind of halfway between, say, the Hellcat and the MP40 in terms of how that works and probably how picky it'll be. But these are pretty darn standard. These are the ones with the little spring in the front. And so you can probably swap these out with pretty much anything. And, you know, decent metallic finish on some stuff. Again, the barrel here looks a lot like some of the custom things you might get on a PSA dagger or something like that. That's a Glock 17 or Glock 19 clone. So, you know, certainly a serviceable prop. And most people aren't going to get close enough to read that writing that says it's a training replica. But you know, it's interesting. It's an interesting kind of in between. Decently crisp blowback action, and it does have the inset trigger thing that real Glocks don't have, but it doesn't appear to be functional. This is just decorative, that sort of trigger safety there. Even if I'm not touching that at all, I can still get it to cycle. So the trigger safety on this is just decorative. But again, I'm talking about prop stuff, so decorative is 90% of what I do. I don't really care for the most part if these things are actually functional or not. So as these go, you know, not bad. It's fine. This was yeah, maybe a little cheaper than some of the laser blowback. Yeah, the laser pointer ones with the spring blowback shell ejection that are trademarked and maybe a little higher quality or a bit more useful in some prop ways, but it's not bad. And it, you know, it does the job, and it's got a decent look, so I can certainly see there being a use for this. I'm not sure that the quality of the packaging and the quality of the prop necessarily have anything to do with each other in this case. I would give it a higher rating on the packaging and maybe a little lower on the prop than some things like the Hellcat or the MP40, but it'll do. So, next one will be coming up soon. A shotgun, and not just any shotgun, a semi-automatic shotgun. Been really curious about these for a while, so stay tuned for that one. As always, like, subscribe, share, whatever, and I'll see you next time.